So this video is for my photosynthesis quiz for botany. And the first question is, draw a diagram of the photosynthetic process, including the light reactions and carbon reactions in the chloroplast. Additionally, describe what plant pigments are important for photosynthetically active radiation and the role of stomates in photosynthesis. Okay, so here is my diagram. Oh gosh, maybe I should. Or the brightness. Okay. Here is my diagram of photosynthesis happening in the chloroplast. So light goes in and then it hits the light reactions in the thylakoids, which are these little pancake looking things. And here's the outer membrane. It's kind of like brown, and then the inner membrane's red. The stroma is in all green. And then here are the carbon reactions. Yep, there's my diagram. And then for what plant pigments are important for photosynthetically active radiation would be the first one would be chlorophyll, and that one absorbs red and blue wavelengths. It's also like the main pigment for photosynthesis. And then there's carotenoids. Those are those protect against the high light damage. Sorry. And then there's phycobilins. I think that's what they're called, phycobilins. And those are red and blue pigments in algae. Those are all the important pigments for that. And then the role of stomates in photosynthesis. Stomates are basically like what helps the plant breathe in and out. They're little pores in leaves and then I think the stems also of plants that regulate gas exchange. So like they like let in CO2 and then they shoot out oxygen and other stuff. Basically, it helps the plant breathe. It shoots out oxygen and water. Then question 2 is of the advantages and disadvantages of C3 and C4 photosynthesis. Include the consequences of photorespiration. Furthermore, using facts, explain which photosynthetic pathway you think is more efficient. Okay, so for this question, I have the advantages for C3 and C4 right here. So the advantages would be, the advantages of C3 would be it favors high CO2 environments, and that would probably do really well in today's climate since climate change is happening and there's a bunch of CO2 in the atmosphere. And then high CO2 concentrations. High CO2 concentrations of carboxylation, replaces oxygen and Rubisco. Under hot and dry conditions, RUBP will catalyze with Rubisco and attach to oxygen. So basically, I think that is called. I forgot what that was called. Anyway, and then there's photorespiration occurs in C3 plants. I think that's what photorespiration is actually. And then for C4 plants, the advantages. PEP binds only to CO2. This absorbs CO2 even from environments where there isn't really a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. C4 photosynthesis was a biochemical adaptation to a CO2 limited environment about 10 to 15 million years ago. And then I think this is disadvantages. Disadvantages: C4. Gosh, stinks. Okay, C4 plants do not benefit much from increases in atmospheric CO2 concentration. So basically, like, if CO2 concentrations were to spike like drastically in a short amount of time, it won't really see an increase in how much the plant grows. And then which photosynthetic pathway do I think is better? I think C4 is better because C4 plants have a higher rate of photosynthesis and minimize photorespiration. This is because of the bundle sheath having a higher concentration of carbon dioxide than the mesophyll, and the other, yeah, it had the bundle sheath has a higher concentration of CO2 than the mesophyll, and the higher concentration is then traveled straight into the carbon cycle to be reacted by riboscope. So that's my answer for 2. And then for question 3 is the last question. It said to draw simplified diagrams of C3, C4, and CAM photosynthesis. Compare and contrast how these processes are similar and how they're different from each other. Okay. So this is not too difficult because they're all pretty different. So this is my these are my diagrams for C3 plant, C4, and then the CAM photo pathway. So some similarities would be that they all take in CO2, and they all process CO2 through the Calvin cycle. I think it's the same thing. Through the Calvin cycle to produce glucose. The difference is where this happens or when it happens. And C3 plants, all of this just happens in the mesophyll, right? And then the C4 plant, some of it happens in the mesophyll, but not the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle happens in the in the bundle sheath, and then in the CAM cycle, everything occurs in the mesophyll, but at different times of the day. So yeah, that's my answer to question 3, and that's the last question. Thank you. Everything in here was from the lecture. Bye.